and welcome to PSG Review. We have a new week which has started in the aftermath of Le Classique. To be honest with you, there's not a lot of aftermath to be had since there was only one team on the pitch and bunch of excuses by the other, but such is life sometimes. We have also been that team before, although being that team in Le Classique, well, that hasn't happened in a very long time.
You are listening to PSG Review. Here's your host, Mikko.
Good to have you with me. How is it going? I do hope you are well. I'm certainly fine and very happy. PSG-wise also, all things considered, while the European campaign is having a slow and labored start with not amazing results to show for our trouble there on the continent, the domestic league is firmly in our control, and it always helps when you get to humiliate the nemesis from the south coast. I wish we would have a better result from the match before that, also against PSV, because that was a must-win match, more or less to keep the path open, or at least possible, to the top 8 in the Champions League phase, and that would then spare us from 2 continental matches and some traveling during the time of the year when things in football happen in very small margins. Any random thing can cause a complication for the rest of the season. One bigger knock to a key player might mean that their season is done and there's no time to come back. And of course, certainly mathematically, the road is still open to the top 8. It does start to demand more and more Herculean achievements to get there. Before anything else, though, let me talk about something football, but not strictly PSG related, in a new segment called PSG Reviews Potentially Unpopular Footballing Policy Proposal. Abolish Ballon d'Or. The great overhyped Employee of the Month in the world of football trophy was once again handed out, and as it is, I always criticize an individual award in a team sport. To me, it doesn't make that much sense, but to be honest with you, if I'm being more precise, it is the absolutely overblown hype and the significance that has been given to this specific award that I have a problem with. I was so happy we had nothing to do with it this year. It's always in Paris, that's where it happens, but outside of few folks in the event like Warren Zaire-Emery, Vitinha and João Neves, it wasn't anything to do with PSG, and I have no strong opinion around the winner and the controversy around it. It's been voted by whoever has the vote, and those people vote the way that they do with the reasons that they have. Not sure how often I agree with them, but I don't know how often I agree with people in general. But, there's a selection of opinions that contribute to the final result. The winner, Rodri, is a great player who undoubtedly deserves recognition, which he has gotten. I mean, he's far from being an unsung hero. It's also quite funny when people are treating him as such. He was the player of the Euros last summer. And then, of course, there was Vinicius Jr., very good in the Champions League at least, and the controversy was that some people said that he should have won it and Real Madrid threw a tantrum, and it's just very silly at this point. And what are the reasons behind these decisions? Well, people vote, and people can have a very bad reasons for voting. Some that I find absolutely indefensible, but then you have to question the whole endeavor that we're talking about, and this is exactly what I'm doing. And I will not get in further into this conversation of the winner and who should have been, because they don't really have anything to do with me. And the last thing in this life I want to do is to get involved in some Spanish football beef with these teams and their players that have got nothing to do with me. But I have observed that some players need to perform and deliver for both club and country, and for others it is enough that they do one of them. It is what it is, but the reason why I would abolish this whole award is that entirely out of proportion important that has been given to it, the constant controversy. I mean, are people even enjoying this event on any level? Like on any level, it's not in any way a great show, and the results seem to cause more anger than jubilation. My opinion is that it was the Messi and Ronaldo era that sort of ruined it all, that made it something quite uncontrollable. And perhaps that was because the fans of these two players were just a bit more out there than most. They are devotees like a religious leader would have. They really pushed the conversation towards the type of individualism that Reagan and Thatcher would have absolutely loved, the ideals of collective effort on the pitch, and winning or being defeated as a team were sidelined by this individual glory that rose up in the last little bit over a decade. It doesn't sit well with me at all. And I think that the award has not done well in readjusting into the world now after the long stretch. You could say unjustifiably long stretch that one or the other one of these two were the winners. And then on the women's side, I think that the examples from the women's side are even more glaring. And this is not me necessarily attacking an individual winner or anything like that, but I do find that the women's Ballon d'Or is even more racist than on the men's side. I will say now something that is my analysis. It's my opinion. It is my observation. I'm not happy about it in so many ways, on so many levels. I think it's really awful, but hear me out. In women's football, the appearance of the player is an important part. And I'm not saying that it's a beauty competition entirely, but in the world we live in, women are often rated based on their appearance, their looks and what have you. So there is this element there for sure. And what beauty standard are we talking about? Well, we are talking about, of course, very Eurocentric beauty standards. So in women's football, an average blonde woman will always have a chance to finish higher than a world-class player from the African diaspora. Like I said, it's wrong on pretty much every imaginable level, but this is what I have observed. And I think that even many of the fans themselves are contributing to this. They are enhancing the system. You might disagree with me, but I'm telling you what I've seen. And I'm not saying it's the only thing. Perhaps it's not even the main thing, but I will argue very much that it is a thing. I mean, I guess it's the people who vote who ensure that these old systems are being upheld, but I don't know if they even watch these matches, to be honest with you, or do they just base their votes on vibes or whatever. And the reason why I think that people who vote don't have a very up-to-date knowledge on women's football has to do even with one of our own players. Now, I am not having a go at the one PSG player who finished the highest in a Ballon d'Or this year. I'm talking about Marie-Antoinette Katoto. She finished 7th on the women's side. Now, Marie-Antoinette Katoto, she had a very difficult return from a long-term injury, and she had her moments, but in this time that was considered, I don't know if she would be in my top 7 of PSG women's team, let alone in the whole world. Like really, I like her. I like her a lot. And I'm certainly, let me stress, I'm not attacking her in any way here. But as far as last season went, she was not the key player like she has been before. We know her potential. It's just that in the last 12 months, she's had a fairly slow and difficult return from a long-term injury, which happens. But then how is she that many more spots higher up on this vote than some of the key players who we've been entirely rely on? And some of them didn't even make it in this list. So all this creates a lot of talk, and I guess that is the point. Strong opinions are the currency of the social media era. It doesn't even matter whether you are for or against the whole thing or a specific result, but at this point, Ballon d'Or is just abusing the fact, and that's why I say let's no longer have it. It is a monster that football world created, but that in and of itself doesn't make things better or worse. And it's difficult to return to a sensible Ballon d'Or because that time has gone as far as I'm concerned. My potentially unpopular policy proposal is let's bin the Ballon d'Or. Yeah, I was very happy. It didn't concern us this time. I'm very glad that our talking point for the past few days has been Le Classique. PSG traveled to Stade Velodrome without any of their own supporters, of course, which has become something of a normal thing in the recent years. Such is the venom between the fans, and this time you would have been excused for having some concerns about this match, as PSG had a Champions League match earlier in the week that always impacts the match later on in the week. And of course, Marseille has no such trouble as they don't play European football due to finishing 8th in Ligue last season. That, of course, if you ask them, is because PSG has more money than they do the other teams in between. Who knows? But somehow it is very much our fault, and that's that. It's a funny bunch of people. I'm very biased here. Of course, I'm very biased, and you must take whatever I say in that spirit. But they have made pretty bold choices, and they keep doing that. And when you think about how little they build and how much they renew seemingly all the time, there's all the time something new, like things stand still for like less than a season, it seems. I mean, I don't even know what they expect, because for PSG there was a big renewal during the summer before the last one. Managers had changed quite often before that, which was trouble. Like, we could see that it's not good that they're changing all the time, and we're basically starting a new project quite often, but Marseille just can't hold on to them even that little bit that we have been able to. It's like a machine that is set to destroy itself, and their players who I thought had been well loved and highly regarded by the supporters. People like Jonathan Klaus, Gendouzi, Jean-Michel Mbemba, who I thought was a very good player actually, even though he was playing for the rival team. But even with him, things came to the blows and he's not there now. Even the former captain Rongier, who was on the bench, they seemed quite easy to just move on. I'm not saying that their whole recruitment has been one massive mistake, because there are some players of certain quality there, I suppose, but they've tried to be so gimmicky and hire sort of very controversial players that look radical on the outside, perhaps clever or immoral, probably mostly on the inside, and potentially dangerous on the pitch. Here's a content warning for you. This includes people like Mason Greenwood, who, according to quite a bit of concrete evidence, is a violent sexual predator. In his case, I'm not even sure if I have to say allegedly, but let's say allegedly. Nevertheless, we have seen and heard the evidence, but let's say allegedly for good measure. I mean, it is what it is. He is a talented player to a certain extent, but there's a very little evidence that he has what it takes to be consistent on good enough level to keep his head together. I mean, in this match against PSG, he was pitiful. That's not my problem, though, and it's not his biggest problem either. And neither is the fact that Adrien Rabiot, an academy graduate, and Titi Parisien joined the ranks of the enemy. Now, of course, footballers only have one career, which isn't that long. It's not that many years. And if you burn enough bridges, your options are far fewer. If you have a reputation of a difficult player with even more difficult mom/manager, then you do what you can. Your choices are limited, but perhaps even he had to do some self-reflection and thinking about some of these choices he has made in life when Marseille self-imploded at their own home base in front of a very young PSG squad. Look, I'm not getting too bogged down with every detail of this match at all. It happened. It was a very dominant performance from the beginning to an end. An early goal by João Neves. It was a great team effort, which always warms my heart to build it up, even if in the end there was a deflection that gave him the ball to kick in, and then he obliged, of course, João Neves, but it was a great team effort. The big talking point of this match was, of course, the direct red card that was given to Marseille midfielder Amin Harit. He rushed in with his touch first and scratched the chest of Marquinhos while at it. It was a very reckless act, at least, and his defense was that he didn't even see our PSG captain there, which to me is a very bizarre thing to say, because most of the world-class midfielders sort of take pride in knowing every last one of the things that take place. They scan the pitch and have that awareness where everybody is, and in the end, the scratch on Marcus' chest was very sizable. I mean, I don't know when is the last time that you held a football boot in your hand, the type that these players use when they are playing. I mean, perhaps you, like me, if you play football, maybe you play on artificial surface or some other surface, I don't know, in which case you probably are more familiar with the sort of lighter version of these football boots, not the ones with massive studs that are made of iron or whatever metal, whatever it is. Now, take those studs that are quite sizable and have an athlete kicking you on the chest, like leaping towards you and kicking you in the chest, and you're not going to leave the hospital before mid-2025. I certainly wouldn't, but that's neither here nor there. These players are only human, and of course there's a certain recklessness in this act, whether it is on purpose or not. When you watched and rewatched the leap Harit made to connect with Marquinhos, the red card starts to look quite natural and not at all controversial outside some of the more blinkered Marseille foxholes. And I get it. Getting a red card always causes this kind of reaction. That is very natural. That is not a Marseille-specific thing. I too was very upset last season when I felt that Lucas Beraldo's red card in the same stadium was quite excessive. And essentially, of course, that was based on technicality. There was no real chance of injury or anything like that. He just made a slight push in the midfield area right by the edge of the pitch. The ball was nowhere near our goal and the situation caused no threat in any ways, in my opinion. But he was the last defender, so it enabled the referee of that night to claim that he stopped a clear and obvious goal-scoring opportunity, which I disagreed with then and I still do. But the take-home message is that you can't take these risks because they can go either way. And that time we had to play a large part of the match with 10 players. That, of course, didn't help Marseille much. We beat them while keeping a clean sheet. Same as this time, by the way. I must say that it's getting a little bit boring now because this match is being promoted as the best days in France, but the well-rested and supposedly fully focused Marseille, who only have domestic football to worry about, look like a bunch of schoolboys throwing tantrums in front of their fans who made their exit as early as during the first half. I mean, fans leaving the stadium during the first half. However shambolic we have ever been as PSG, there is no contest with this club, and that's always provided me with some solace, I must say that. Of course, Ligue 1 would benefit from a better flagship match, but for my money, I'm more looking forward anyway to, say, next weekend when we play Lens or when we play against Monaco, things like that, because those are the clubs that don't rely on past glory. They don't make excuses, but they keep on pushing and building projects. It is true that PSG has more money than other French clubs, but there are these other clubs who are not making it a problem every day. It's not like an explanation for absolutely everything that happens. And they have some results to show for it. They have done very well in the recent years, and usually they're quite joy to watch. So fair play to them. I don't have a problem with all of our opponents. I, of course, have more beef with some of them. 3-0 was the end result after Neves' goal, quite a remarkable own goal by Marseille captain Balerdi, and finally from an Ousmane Dembele assist, the top scorer of the league. Bradley Barcola got the third one, and PSG should have had few more goals probably on the second half, but I suppose there no longer was the same urgency there anymore. The Champions League campaign is looking more shaky. The match against PSV at home was supposed to be one where we would have taken the 3 points on paper despite the good domestic start of the season by PSV Eindhoven. They were not supposed to be a team that gives us too much grief, but football is a sport where no guarantees exist, and after cheaply conceded goal by the backup Neymar, Noah Lang, who always seems to have his best matches against us somehow, not that I see many of his other matches, but we were struggling to get anything beyond a draw after that. Scoring goals, it has been an issue in Europe, and essentially the equalizer in this match, which was scored by Hakimi, was the first actual goal that was scored by us during this Champions League campaign, as the winner in the match day 1 against Girona was an own goal in the end. So not a great start. And up next we have Atletico Madrid, who also have had a difficult start for their campaign. That will come next week as I record, and it's at Parc des Princes, by the way, as is our next domestic match against Lens on Saturday early evening local time before it. 3 points against Atletico would put us in a more comfortable position in terms of the qualification, but to be honest with you, being in top 8, it will be a struggle. It will be quite a difficult, having dropped as many points as we have so far and still having to play some of the best teams out there in the whole world. It's not impossible, nothing necessarily is impossible, but it is an uphill battle with little room to anything but to overperform for the rest of the league phase. On the other hand, finishing between 9 and 24, which will put us into the additional qualifying round, seems like something that only a total collapse would stop from happening. It could happen that we don't get there. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but if we don't meet that requirement, then we've got much bigger issues in our hands. So it is what it is. Right now, we will have a big match against Atletico Madrid, and we must go for 3 points there, especially because we didn't manage that against PSV Eindhoven. Before Atletico, like I said, we still play against Lens, so 2 huge matches ahead, and both of them at Parc des Princes. I'm feeling pretty good about the whole project right now. Setting aside the fact that the Champions League has had a suboptimal start, things are looking good, and I think in some time we will have players in use that will change a lot in terms of our gameplay. Gonzalo Ramos and Lucas Hernandez, these are the players that I'm talking about. And who knows, even Presnel Kimpembe. That all remains to be seen. My name is Mikko. Thanks for checking PSG Review out once again, and more of it next time. But until that, peace.